Happy Friday, hockey fans, and welcome into Daily Faceoff Live. You made it through another week, and I'm proud of you, all of you listening and watching this show. For watching,
Kamala Harris, let us get to Friday. It's tremendous.
What? Frank's in a good mood today. We'll talk about that later.
Let's
go. If you're in the YouTube, drop us some inbox questions with the hashtag askdfo. We'll have some time for that later on in the show, as we always do. This show is brought to you as well by Fountain Tire. You and your family's safety is important. Fountain Tire specializes in tire and auto service, and you don't have to settle for a good deal or a good customer service, because at Fountain Tire, they can do both. They treat your vehicle like it's their vehicle. Stop in a Fountain Tire or make an appointment by checking out fountaintire.com. Frank, let's start with before we got to what went down last night in the NHL, let's get to what went down pretty much right after we got off the air yesterday, and that is the Dallas Stars locking up Jake Oettinger. It is an 8-year deal that comes with an $8.25 million AAV. So when Jeremy Swayman said he wanted to reset the goalie market, well, he ended up getting Ullmark's AAV, and then Oettinger gets the exact same AAV as well. Just surface level, what do you make of this?
I don't know if these guys need to pay Jeremy Swayman some royalties, or do they maybe owe him a little cut of their deal as an agent fee. Love Jake Ottinger's agent, Ben Hankinson. I don't know how hard he had to work here. There wasn't even a change in structure. Like signing bonuses, everything rolls out the exact same as Jeremy Swayman. And on the surface, maybe that surprises me a little bit, because I mentioned a couple weeks back after the Swayman deal was signed that really this was kind of the baseline minimum starting point for Jake Oettinger. Obviously, he's really happy in Dallas. And is, of course, the no state income tax difference that will ultimately net Oettinger if both these guys stay in the same place. And, there aren't any crazy tax differences, just about $3.3 million extra over the course of the $66 million deal in his pocket. So it is significant that he's in Dallas when signing it. That part is certain. But I just felt like Oettinger, it's not even a feel, it's a statistical fact that Ottinger's body of work and sample size is much larger. They're the same age. Oettinger has played a 62-game season, carried the workload for the Dallas Stars. He's had multiple trips to the Western Conference Final. Like, he's had sustained playoff runs where he's done the whole thing himself. It's not that there's any doubt or knock on Swayman. It's just that Oettinger has kind of done those things and taken them kind of to the next level in terms of experience and done it for longer, which is always the question in pro sports, right? So to me, a really good, strong, solid deal for Oettinger. I mean, who's sneezing at $66 million when a couple years ago goalie pay was going the other way? And for the Dallas Stars, they've got their franchise goalie and backbone locked up.
Yeah, I think it makes obviously a ton of sense for both sides for the reasons you just said. And if you're Oettinger, $64 million. And when this deal ends, you're going to be right around 33, 34 years old. Knowing what we know about how goalies typically age, a la Marc-Andre Fleury, and I know he is maybe a bit more of a unicorn, but when you're 33, 34, you should still have another really good 4 or 5 year contract in you at that point, if your career goes the way we and everyone else kind of projects it to. So a clear win for both sides. And I think it also boils down to the player wanted to be there, and that obviously makes these negotiations a lot easier as well. I did think Christopher Palmer made a good point in the chat here. Sorokin got his contract first, FYI. And yes, Sorokin actually did get that $8.25 million deal before any of these guys.
Really good point by Chris. And I actually mentioned that on Calgary radio this morning, that maybe these guys owed Sorokin a debt of gratitude because he was kind of the first one. But when you go through all these contracts now, and everyone's going to want to ask about Shesterkin, to me, the biggest thing that stands out is now how underpaid relative to market Connor Hellebuck is as he embarks on this new deal with the Winnipeg Jets.
Yeah, and that's fair as well. One thing that also stands out to me, just as I look at Dallas's kind of cap picture here, is they have some older money now coming off the books in a little bit here. Jamie Benn is in the final year of his deal, so a little bit of money potentially opens up there. I'd be interested to see what they can do going forward here in Dallas as sort of cap flexibility becomes a little bit more available to them, because the key pieces now, like Lindell is locked up long-term. Heiskanen is locked up long-term as well. Rupe Hintz has a decent amount of term. I guess next up is Jason Robertson.
Well, yeah, you're going to need, starting this summer, a new deal for Jason Robertson, but what the heck is Wyatt Johnson going to cost you?
Yeah, that's
so as easy as it might be saying, and it's taken forever to get to this point, Jamie Benn taking a significant haircut in his next contract. they've been hanging on with these guys, Ben and Seguin, for a long time as their deals have shifted and the market has shifted and their games have shifted. It looks like things might get easier, but then again, you consider what I just mentioned, and it's Wyatt Johnson, and then shortly after that, it's going to be Logan Stankoven. And by the way, Matt Duchene has taken an undermarket deal to stay. Like, they've got a lot of puzzle pieces to still fit together. It's not easing up anytime soon.
Fair. Let's move along to some of the action we saw last night on the ice. And let's start with the Detroit Red Wings, Frank, who were taken down by the New York Rangers for a second straight game. It's a 5-2 defeat. And again, no empty netters here. They were down 5-1 through 40 minutes. So it's not like the game was any more flattering than what the scoreboard goes to show. Detroit, I think, has been a tad unlucky. They're 26th in 5-on-5 PDO. That number should come up a little bit, although it's not overly egregious, but they're allowing the 5th most shots against at 5-on-5. They've had a couple of rough goaltending performances, namely one from Ville Husso this season. When you look at a Red Wings team that is now 1-3 to start the year, do you go signs for concern, or do you go, well, they did just lose twice to a really good Rangers team?
Major red flags.
Okay.
And it's not for the PDO. Obviously, their goal scoring will increase. To me, it's the way they defend and their goaltending. I have said for a while that I'm not a believer in the Red Wings defense core. I don't think it's Stanley Cup playoff caliber. And beyond that, their goaltending leaves a ton to be desired. You see Cam Talbot yanked last night after allowing 5. Alex Lyon comes in. They're carrying 3 goalies. They can't get it right. They just can't. And I don't know what the solution is there, because I don't think there's a short-term fix. Some excitement today, Marco Kasper being recalled under emergency conditions, first-round pick. Obviously someone that Derek Lalonde had mentioned that if he is coming up, it will be for a longer period of time. So that part's exciting, but the emergency conditions, they sound like it's obviously a roster thing, but kind of feels more like emergency conditions in terms of their season, because I just think the Detroit Red Wings are stuck in neutral, and I don't know how they find a way out with the way that they're defending. Yes, this is a really mercurial team from last year, a team that had a roller coaster ride, good start, really poor stretch through and in around December, and then found it again just in time to, experience some playoff heartbreak and fall short. So the key to that last year was that they got off to a good start. I do think they have the offensive firepower to get there, but real question marks about their defense. And look, I had this team finishing 8th in the division, and that's exactly where they sit now through the first handful of games of the season. It's way too early to pat yourself on the back, and that's certainly not what I'm doing at the expense of Red Wings fans. But I'm struggling to see a path forward. And by the way, we'll talk about the Bolts in a second, but take a look at the Atlantic Division standings today. They're basically the same 4 teams in the playoffs that have been in the playoffs for the last however many years. How do you find a way to break through, particularly when it feels like, and we'll get to it, another year in which I underestimated the Tampa Bay Lightning?
Yeah, Jeremiah says feels like the Yzer plan is in some trouble. David is in. He says the Sabres have pieces, but the Wings seem to have a whole lot of nothing. And I mean,
by the way, the Sabres, they got to find a way to defend. I mean,
that too, but at least you can look at their blue line and be like, I like Byram, I like Power, I like Dahlin.
That's the part that's so frustrating, is because you look at it and you say, if you were to start a team from scratch today and build, how many defense cores would you pick before you pick Buffalo? Maybe Colorado? That's it. I'm not picking another one before I'm picking Buffalo. And the fact that the Sabres, another game like last night, 6 goals against, it just doesn't cut it.
No, it doesn't. And they got to get it figured out. But the point, and again, to go to David's point there, like, at least in Buffalo, you can look at that blue line and be like, okay, if everyone figures it out here, like, we like those pieces. We looked at Detroit's blue line. Like, was that maybe their misstep this offseason to tie it into the Yzer plan? As much as even saying that now makes me kind of roll my eyes. Like, should they have focused harder on this blue line? Like, getting Eric Gustafsson, that shouldn't have been viewed as any sort of a solution.
Look, they've got 2 really good foundational pieces in Moritz Seider, and Simon Edvinsson is just breaking into the league. Asking him to be your second best defenseman and carry a pair is not a recipe for success. Justin Hall, Ben Sherratt, Oli Mata, Jeff Petrie when he's healthy, Eric Gustafson. Like, that's not the makings of a playoff caliber defense. It just isn't.
Yeah, and I mean, again, I like Larkin and Raymond, DeBrincat. I like the support pieces,
Kane.
Comfer, but maybe you didn't need Vladimir Tarasenko at nearly $5 million to play on your third line.
Yeah, and also missing another big piece last year from David Perron. I mean, he's in Ottawa now. Like, there has been some turnover, and it's just the defense hasn't improved.
Yeah. One team that is waking up feeling a little bit better today is the Vancouver Canucks. Frank, they were able to get their first win of the season yesterday. It was another OT game for the Vancouver Canucks. 3 of their first 4 games have gotten to the free hockey period, if you want to call it that. Last night, 2-2 through 60 minutes, and then it's JT Miller coming through in overtime. If there was any question, and yes, I know Quinn Hughes is a fantastic player, and yes, I know they paid Elias Pettersson all that money. JT Miller is the heartbeat of this team and the heartbeat of this fan base too.
Unquestioned. That part is for certain. I don't know if this year is his coming out party because last year was pretty damn good, but I really like everything about JT Miller's game, how much it's grown, how passionate he is. I think all of that rubs off on the rest of the team. I mean, you spend 5 minutes around that team and you understand not just that he's the heartbeat, but he's also the soul of that team too. He cares. Here's the thing. I think you mentioned maybe the Wings have been a little bit unlucky. I think the Canucks have probably been a little bit unlucky. They blew a couple leads that they shouldn't have. They've scored fine for surviving to this point, again, without Thatcher Demko and their number 1 goalie. They've had some miscues defending, but nothing like super egregious. And I'll say this, the Canucks 4 games in have the exact same number of points that they had 4 games in last year. So as much as people were concerned about the start, concerned about them being one of the final 4 teams that didn't have a win heading into last night's game, they can all probably breathe a little bit of a sigh of relief today, just knowing that, hey, we're on the board. You saw how important that was for Edmonton, getting on the board against the Flyers. Just this like feeling of relief. Then you carry that over into the next game in Nashville, which they did on Thursday. The Oilers pick up their first road win of the season. All of a sudden, they have a chance to get through this week being 3-3, and all of a sudden, it's not really a topic of conversation anymore. Canucks going into Philly on Saturday have the ability to do the same.
Yeah. Brian says it's funny. A couple of years ago, fans wanted Miller gone. I remember the conversations about, okay, his deal's kicking in. Do you try to trade him quickly before the extension even kicks in? And again, it just goes to show sometimes patience is the best route. And on the Canucks there, I know people will maybe sit there and roll their eyes and go, oh, overtime points. Like, great, they're grabbing loser points. Look at the East last season. The Islanders and Capitals both lost more than they won, and they got in because they racked up loser points. Like, 2 loser points is basically worth a win unless we're talking tiebreakers.
It's all about banking points. I mean, it's our friend Dustin Nielsen. Milk, squirt, squirt. That's all that matters at the end of the day, that you fill up the bucket. And Blake Price, I think, had a great point on Twitter today. He said from the Sakaris and Price show, he said last year the Canucks had points in 72% of games, at least a point. This year they're at 75. Like, they're fine.
Yeah. 50, 23, and 9 last year were the Vancouver Canucks, and they won the Pacific Division. Just quickly, is the Pacific Division this year, like, again, I viewed it as like top heavy. I said Edmonton, Vancouver, Vegas, boom. Is it maybe going to be tighter than we think? Or is this just early season? Teams are racking up some weird wins and it's whatever.
Probably early season. I mean, San Jose is already floating to the bottom. Anaheim, they're going to compete for a while, and I really like some of the juice that they have. Like Leo Carlson scoring the OT winner this week was awesome. Maybe the Kraken are kind of the wild card here. If they're a team that exceeds expectations, things will be tighter. But I think the jury's still out on the Flames. I think we need to get to Halloween before making a judgment 2 weeks from now, whether or not they're the real deal.
Again, it is Frank, but let's go out and talk about the suddenly 2-0 Tampa Bay Lightning. Reports of their demise maybe a little premature. I know we spent some time talking about that on this show and on the DFO rundown, but
3-0 Tampa Bay Lightning.
Yes, 3-0 Tampa Bay Lightning. And one thing that stands out to me is the guy you see in the picture here, Nikita Kucherov. More goals than the rest of the roster combined, Frank.
Crazy. He's on another level, and it's outrageous still. And I know for a guy, I say this knowing that he's a guy that I voted for the Hart Trophy last year. It still feels like people sleep on Kucherov. Like when you have a conversation about the 5 best players in the game, is he mentioned in that 5 every single time?
Not really. Like, again, I think a lot of people just jump to McDavid, Matthews, Draisaitl, Makar, and then the 5th spot's always up for grabs.
He's ridiculous. Vasilevsky has gotten back, at least to start, to Vasilevsky form. And I think everyone wants to do the cheap and easy comparison, Jake Gensel points versus Steven Stamkos points to this point in the season. And that's, first off, ridiculously unfair. But, you know, the one concern that I had, well, 2 concerns that I had about Tampa Bay heading into the season, and the reason why I projected them to fall short of the playoffs was their depth, I think, is not what it once was. And 2, I think their defense just isn't nearly as good as it used to be without Sergachev there. Yes, I know Ryan McDonough back, and you're probably expecting some big things from a JJ Moser or whoever it might be. But to me, I don't think they're as good as they were. And that's probably not a crazy reach to say that. The part that I wasn't sure about was if Vasilevsky all of a sudden is back in Vezina form, then it's probably a totally different conversation when he goes through last year at 900.
Yeah, JJ Moser playing on the top pairing right now as well with Victor Hedman. But you mentioned their depth. I mean, their second line right now is Cirelli, Hagel, and Nick Paul. I remember a point not that long ago where that was the best third line in hockey. And now, again, it just speaks to how those guys are elevated, and the bottom 6 just isn't what it used to be.
But will that catch up to them over a long period of time? It felt really bold, and still feels especially bold today, saying that the Lightning would miss the playoffs. But you have to think they were a 98 or 99 point team last season. That's not insanely far ahead of the rest of the pack of 8, 9, 10 in the conference. So you're talking about, the difference of a handful of points over the course of an 82 game season. To think that isn't or wasn't in the realm of possibility, I don't know. I think to this point, you could probably mark it down for the rest of the season that I'm going to be wrong.
Fair. You mentioned Gensel versus Stamkos. Yes, Gensel, 3 assists. Sure, neither player has a goal yet, and they're getting paid to score. But again, very, very early. Let's move along. Let's get to our big segment today. It is a new edition of Icebreakers. Another edition of Icebreakers, our insider segment with Frank Saravalli. And let's start with a little nugget you threw across last night. Frank, you reported the Calgary Flames are in the mix and maybe looking to add a centerman. What exactly are they looking for? Shine a little bit more light on that.
Yeah, so the interesting part about passing along a nugget like that one is that Flames fans immediately get up in arms and say, wait a second, 4-0, why are we going out and adding pieces? We are trying to rebuild. Can't this team just not get in its own way? And I just have to stop you for a second and say, first off, in 30 seconds, you can't convey all the context necessary. 2, this ask or this request, this want has been out there since training camp, regardless of their start. It has nothing to do with a 4-0 start. The Flames are looking to add a center, someone in their middle 6, someone that preferably in a perfect world is a right shooting center at that. But here's the key part of this. They're looking for someone that fits their age scheme for the team that they are building. It's not let's spend. It could be something as simple as a waiver claim, just FYI, but it could be bigger than that. And it could be someone that fits for a longer period of time till 2027, 2028, whatever it might be. So I guess when you hear all those facts and information about the context about what they want to do and Craig Conroy's trying to do, it kind of feels to me like any sort of angst that the Flames fans have about it or the market has about it is short-sighted, because this team isn't going to bottom out. We're already seeing that this year. The pieces that they have, the contracts that they have, they're very likely to not be a bottom 5 team in the NHL that's in that lottery zone. So if that's the case, you need to continue to build. It needs to be a slow and steady build that is meticulous. And to go out and add a piece that fits the age scheme, I don't know why that wouldn't be something that Flames fans would want to do
And
for
David
the
is
long haul.
Yeah, it says Rasmus off the trade block. And
He hasn't been on it.
well, so I was going to say, is it safe to assume then, like as an outsider, I was going, okay, who are the Flames going to sell off this year? But this isn't going to be like last year?
Look, they could get to a point this season where they have to make some really tough decisions because their phone's ringing off the hook. But I can tell you that their game plan right now is to keep this noise around this team as quiet as possible. They feel like for the first time in a couple years, they've got a collection of 23 to 25 guys that want to be there. That's made a difference so far. I think you can see in their play. And there's been so much of a revolving door and pieces gone that they would like some continuity. So they don't have to make a decision this year on Rasmus Andersson. They could. He's got a great cap hit and contract, but I don't think they feel pressure to one way or the other. And it wouldn't surprise me at all if they wanted to hang on to him, because I just mentioned they want to compete. They want to be as competitive as possible as they go through this sort of downturn to get back to where they want to get to.
Let's go out east to your neck of the woods, Frank. It is quite the story to see Jet Lachenko break roster as an 18-year-old. He played his third game of the season on Thursday night. They're heading back to Philadelphia for their season opener, and obviously everyone's looking down the road and going, oh, when's that 9-game mark for Jet Lachenko? Any insight into the Flyers' plan for the first round pick?
Well, the most intriguing part to me over the last 24 to 48 hours was listening to John Tortorella. And if you've watched their behind the scenes, you've seen how excited he's been and pushing for Jet Lachenko to be part of this team. But he's already begun the public sort of politicking of, hey, this guy's playing because he deserves to be here. And that's great. But really what the Flyers brass and Keith Jones and Danny Briere are thinking about and what they're talking about right now is this best for the long-term future of Jet Lachenko? He's lived up to his name, providing the speed. He's certainly given this team a shot in the arm in terms of energy. He has a ton of upside, but is an 82-game slog when you know that the only options are NHL or OHL. Is that the best course of action? Typically, I would say no, but I can tell you, and what I'm passing along in terms of the insider nugget is what the Flyers are debating, and which is what a lot of teams end up debating at this point, is what if isn't it so much better to have our control over his development process as opposed to just handing him off to Guelph or the OHL and saying, here, you develop our star talent that we're looking for so many big things for. It's a push and a pull, and it's a difficult decision to make. It's too early to say which way they're leaning yet. But I do think the idea of them having their own hands on his development is certainly a really attractive thing for the Flyers.
Yeah, I do think the only thing that can sometimes be a little dangerous in that sense is, the Kraken kind of tried to do that with Shane Wright, and it ended up just being him getting jerked around in all these conditioning stints in here and World Juniors and back. Like it ended up getting kind of weird and awkward for a bit.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly what they want to try and avoid. So I think maybe just patience is key. And maybe you see him not play back-to-backs. Maybe if you can drag this out long enough before making a decision, the answer will come to you.
Yeah, and I mean, we saw Anaheim do something similar to that with Leo Carlsson last year. He's off to a solid start this
Different
season.
situation, though, because he could play somewhere else.
Yeah, I guess.
AHL as opposed to going back to junior.
Yeah, because he had the European thing. All right, couple big injury updates in the last 24 hours. Eric Goodbranson in Columbus is going to miss some significant time. Sean Durzi, I mean, that is just a massive blow for that Utah blue line. Durzi was off to a great start this season. But let's talk about the first overall pick, Macklin Celebrini. Any word on when Sharks fans could get another look at him? I mean, it's such a great first game with the king. You went right on the IR.
Yeah, it's really such a bummer, but I'm told that it's going to be a couple weeks before we see Macklin Celebrini back again. He's been dealing with a nagging hip injury. They want to take their time. They want to make sure they get this right so that this isn't something that hinders him all season long. And right now, patience is the name of the game. He's technically listed as day-to-day. He could be back really as soon as today, I believe, based on his IR status. But I'm told we're likely looking at a couple more weeks before we see Celebrini back in the lineup, which is tough. But I guess in the grand scheme and picture of a full season and a long, prosperous career, maybe this makes sense.
Icebreakers with Frank Saravalli, brought to you by Fountain Tire, our weekly insider segment. Thank you, Frank. Let's move along to our daily Faceoff inbox question. Our pal Joel is in. Hashtag askdfo. Who has their unbeaten record broken first? How about last? Well, the Winnipeg Jets are one of those teams. They're in action tonight against the Sharks. The other teams that don't have a loss, either in regulation or in overtime, so like a perfect clean record, the Tampa Bay Lightning, they get the Ottawa Senators tomorrow in a matinee. And then, yes, the surprising Calgary Flames, they get Seattle tomorrow night. Frank, out of those three, who do you think goes on the longest with their unbeaten streak?
I don't know. I like what I've seen from Seattle this week. I see them getting on the board against the Calgary Flames.
Yeah, I could see Seattle winning that one too. I'm going to go ahead and say, just because, again, they play San Jose tonight. We mentioned no Macklin Celebrini. I think Winnipeg could keep it rolling. They get Pittsburgh on Sunday. So I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if we're talking Monday about a 5-0 Jets team.
Me neither. And that San Jose team is decimated. Watching them play in Chicago last night, they had a tough go.
Yeah, it is rough. Injuries racking up there. Tyler Toffoli, after the game the other day, just kind of showing some frustration, saying flat out, our power play sucks. So yeah,
you signed there.
Yeah, fair enough. All right, let's move along to our daily bets, brought to you by Bet365. You can sign up today and get in on a wide range of markets by using the promo code DAILY365. Whatever the sport, whatever the moment, it's never ordinary at Bet365. We got NFL football. We got playoff baseball still on the go. And yes, I got a couple of picks for tonight's NHL slate, including the over between Anaheim and Colorado. Now, the over has only hit once in 3 games this year for the Ducks. It was in their last game against Utah. But for Colorado, it has been well documented, their struggles in terms of keeping pucks out of their net. Anaheim's offense started to wake up the other day. Colorado's big guns are rolling, and Colorado can't keep the puck out of their net. I think this is a recipe for the over all day. And earlier in the week, I did the little shot ladder with Dylan Cousins, where we start at 3, you bet 3, 4, 5, and 6, and you see how high you can go. Shane Gostisbehere is my guy today, and it is so juicy. 3 shots on goal is plus 175. And if you want to run this thing up a little bit, 4 shots is plus 450. 5 shots is plus 1,000. He had 6 in his last game. He's combined for 9 through 2 games this season. I love this plus 175 price tag on Gostisbehere at 3+, and I like seeing where he can run it up to. Frank, why not?
Plus 1,000 for 5 shots?
And he did it last game. He got 6.
That's crazy.
It's fun. I was talking to our producer Pat before. It's a really fun way to have like a little bit more juice, because it's almost like a parlay. We're like, okay, or it's like a safer parlay, because again, if he gets 3 like Cousins did, you're good, you're breaking even, and then just split up that other money and see how high they can go. It's fun.
Yeah, but does any part of you be like, hey, I'm watching intently on the score sheet of the Carolina Hurricanes notch by notch for each shot on goal?
That is also a good point. Let's wrap up the show with a little bit of garbage time. Frank, take it away.
So I'm going to throw an image up on the screen. I know that you know who these 2 guys are, but wondering what our chat thinks. Who are these 2 guys? Well, on the left is St. Louis Blues captain Brayden Schenn, and on the right is his brother, an absolute unit in Luke Schenn, the pride of Saskatoon. Congratulations, big congratulations to Luke Schenn on 1,000 career NHL games on Thursday night as a member of the Nashville Predators. Look, this has been a grind for Luke Schenn, and he was a high draft pick, 8 overall or 5 overall by the Toronto Maple Leafs. And so many big things were expected of his career. And a lot of that kind of came to a grinding halt 5 years ago, reached a crossroads. I remember talking to him at the time. He was thinking, hey, I might start doing media stuff. My career might be over. And he had 3 different stints in the AHL, cleared waivers a few times, went on to latch on with the Tampa Bay Lightning, won Stanley Cups, and has now, continued to grow his game, great year in Vancouver, ends up with the Nashville Predators on a 3-year deal, just totally rebuilt his career. There will be some credit given, of course, to Adam Oates, who did a fantastic job as his private skills coach and really helped revamp his game. But all the credit and perseverance goes to Luke Schenn to continue to battle on and to reinvent himself, because it's easy. Guys get down on themselves, made a bunch of money, could feel secure, maybe like, hey, I don't need to keep playing, but that's true love of the game. And he's one of the most well-liked teammates around and one of the best people that I've had a chance to meet in hockey. So congratulations to Luke. And I threw that photo up on the screen because his brother Braden is actually only 15 games away from 1,000 himself, I think, if I'm doing my math correct. That's going to happen in relative short order. So to have both brothers hit 1,000 career games in one season, I don't know if that's been done before. Maybe the Sedins.
Yeah, the Sedins both obviously would have done it with the Vancouver Canucks, but I think you're right. I'm not sure how many other sets of brothers would have been able to hit the 1,000 game mark. Never mind. Yeah, same season is pretty wild. And that little stint there, a 3-year run where he was down in the American League, or 2-year run, I guess you could say, and then it led into COVID. It's pretty impressive for him to come back from that and then kind of revamp his career. So congratulations to one Schenn, and yeah, we're about a month away from giving congratulations to another Schenn. So I'm excited. Maybe you can dig up a different photo for that one, Frank.
We'll see. That sounds like a good Frankly Speaking episode to get 2 Schenns on one show.
Yeah, that would be cool. And Frankly Speaking, again, this week drop, and we're still going through your sort of preseason media trip as well. So you can find Frankly Speaking wherever you get your podcast from. If you're looking for a little weekend hockey listening, couple of loaded slates on Saturday and Sunday as well. So it should be a good one, and we should have plenty to talk about next Monday. Everybody in the YouTube chat, you were great. Also want to plug that if you want to keep some conversation going over the weekend, we now have an official daily Faceoff Reddit thread as well. So you can keep the conversation going over on Reddit. Excited that we're doing that this season. Enjoy your weekend, hockey fans. We'll be back Monday, noon Eastern. What's up, hockey fans? If you enjoyed that video, then you're going to want to hit the subscribe button to not miss any of our content, from daily live shows with Frank Saravalli to analysis from former NHLers to exclusive interviews with some of the biggest names in the hockey world on Frankly Speaking. You're going to want to hit that subscribe button and stay up to date with everything going on in the hockey world.